beauty. This is the cake I am so proud of. This is the cake I have made just very recently. And because I always wanted to do a cake like that, I'm really excited to share that process with you. I'm going to show you how I've created it. To be honest, when I was looking for tutorials and ways of creating that cake, I really didn't find any. So I thought, why don't I be the one to show you? So here it is. So I have vanilla sponge with two fillings. The first filling is Kinder Bueno and the second is Kinder Bueno White. This is what the client wanted and this is what I did. Now I am applying a crumb coat. I am using white chocolate ganache. I have colored it a little bit and I'm applying it all the way around. Now because this is the first coat, crumb coat, so as the name says, we are just basically covering it, not to have any loose crumbs moving around the cake when we are putting the final coat on the cake. Now that cake will be covered with fondant, so there is no need for the coat, for the second coat of the ganache to be really thick, to stabilize the cake, to hold the cake, for it not to crack, not to move, but it has to be thick enough to cover, to hold the shape. So we're going to still do two coats. So this is the first coat. I'm just kind of smoothing out more or less. Now I'm taking the extra ganache that fell on the board. I'm trying to kind of scoop it out, and I'm going to use a wet paper towel also just to wipe it off more or less, and I'm going to cool it in the fridge for, let's say, 30 minutes. Now this crumb coat is not too thick coat of ganache, so it probably will not need more than 30 minutes to harden. So that goes to the fridge now. Now, as you could see the shape of the cake, this is the pattern that I have used. That's why you can see it has some oil in there. I have placed it on the cake. Once it was ready to cut, I've cut out the shape, and what I'm doing now is I'm using the same shape to trace it on the cardboard. You can use cardboard, you can use any a box that you have received by post or whatever, anything that is thick enough. uh, it doesn't have to be anything that is food safe, because we are going to cover it before we place it on the cake. So what I'm doing here is I've just traced that shape. So this is the size of the cake. Now to that we need to add a border that goes all the way around, so that will be thickness of the ganache. So as I said, it is going to be covered with fondant, so it doesn't need to be really thick. So I'm kind of measuring maybe 1.5 centimeter of the ganache. This is the layer that I want. That's how thick I want my ganache to be all the way around the cake. So I'm just gently tracing it here all the way around, just eyeballing it, and then I'm just going to cut it. As you can see the lines, this is not perfect, but once we use scissors it's going to be, those lines will get straighter. So I'm just showing to you here how I'm doing it. And I guess we're nearly there. There we go. So now I'm going to grab a scissors, quite sharp scissors because the board is thick, and I'm going to cut it out all the way around, trying to keep it as straight lines as they can be. And here it is. So this is going to be the size of the covered cake. Now what we need to do, we have to cover it with the cling film. So I'm going to use the cling film piece of it, and I'm going to use a tape. Now I want that piece to be big enough to cover one side. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull and stick, pull and stick again, pull and stick. I want the other side of it to be as smooth as possible. So I'm going to pull all the way around and stick all the way around as I'm showing you here. Pull and stick. I know it's not going to be perfect, especially that there are curves here, but let's do it the best we can. All right, so that is done. Now I'm going to grab the cake that was in the fridge. So that first coat has already set, it's already hard. Now normally we would cover the cake again on top, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to cover the board. That will avoid the air bubbles to be, created there. We don't want any air bubbles, and we want to apply quite a generous amount of the cream, of the ganache in this case, all the way around, on the sides and on the edges, because whatever is extra, it's going to ooze out once we press it against the cake. But we rather have too much than to have not enough, and then there will be a big gaps, and we don't want them. So now that it's ready, I'm going to flip it over and press it against the cake so that it sticks together. Now the idea is also to check all the way around and making sure that we keep the shape more or less. That, remember, this 1.5 centimeter, this gap remains the same on all sides, so that all the three sides will have the same amount, the same thickness of the ganache. So now that we have the top part done, I'm going to fill the sides with the ganache all the way around. Now the important thing about the ganache or any cream, buttercream, whatever you use, is the consistency of it, if I can say that. Uh, it has to be a consistency of a really soft butter. It cannot be too thick, because first of all it's going to be really hard to be molded. It will be pulling together with that scraper as I'm doing here. If it's too soft, it will be falling down, it will be oozing down, and we also will not be able to achieve that shape. So it has to be kind of in the middle. Now once we're smoothing here, if you see that there are any gaps, anything that we still have to refill, we do that and we keep smoothing. This smoothing process is going to take a while. That's why I'm speeding it here, because I don't want you to get bored. But the idea here is to do it really nice and smooth, so that these will just look really, really nice. And we want to do our best with the cake. We don't want it to look anyhow. We want it to be beautiful, even though it will be covered with fondant later on. We want that cake to be as as cleanly done as possible. So now again, I'm using the paper towel wet. I always use warm water so that whatever fat is in it, the board will be extra clean. So now that the cake is out of the fridge, we have to remove that top layer, that piece of cardboard. For that, we have to free it first. Remember, we have put a tape, we have taped the foil to it, and now we have to remove it. So I'm cutting all the way around, excuse me, to free that board. We have to be really gentle. We don't want to pull on something and then mess up the top. Now it's coming off quite easy. There's some tape that was actually still sticking, so I'm trying to pull it off here really gently again. We don't want to mess up all the work that we have just done. And there we go. So this looks quite smooth. I'm just going to peel that foil off. It's very easy because the cake is really chilled, so it's quite easy process now. So that's how it is. You can see how sharp the edges are, and this is what we wanted. Now, because of course there are some imperfections there, first I'm scraping the things that are a little bit too high, and I'm going to use the same ganache that I have used while the cake was in the fridge. I left the ganache on the counter, on the kitchen counter, so it's still in room temperature. It's still this consistency of very soft butter, so it's really easy to work with. So what I'm doing now is I am filling all the gaps, all the dents. And that is it. And now I'm going again to use the paper towel dipped with in hot water. Now because the cake is set, we can go really close to the cake and we are not going to mess up at the side of it. We want to basically prepare that board for the next step, which will be to apply fondant to the cake, how to cover the cake. I'm going to show you in the next part how to prepare the fondant, what I am adding to the fondant for it not to be ripping, to be very, have this elasticity, be easy to work with. I'm going to show you the thickness of it. I'm going to show you how to color it. I'm also going to show you how to place the letters, the edible letters that I am doing on the cake, and also to create those extra parts of the perfume that go on top of the cake. I'm going to show you all this in the next part, so please check at the next video I'm going to post here, and I'll show you all this in details. So I'll see you next time. Bye.